Hello, my name is Mike Summers, and I am the Wind Instrument Brand Manager at KHS America. These brands include Jupiter Band Instruments, Azumi Flutes, Altus Professional Flutes, and EXO Professional Brass Instruments. Today, I'm going to talk about how to take care of your brass instruments. I have three different brass instruments here. There's three different ways to take care of them. These are piston valved instruments. So I have a euphonium and a trumpet, and I have a horn that has rotor valves. And they require a little bit different kind of care. So first I'm going to talk about the trumpet. When you take your trumpet out of the case and you're getting ready to play, you'll sometimes notice that your valves probably need to be oiled. And if they do, then I'm going to show you how to do this by removing each valve one at a time. This is the top cap, so you want to unscrew the top cap, rotating it counterclockwise, and then you pull the valve out. And for this one, we're going to put the trumpet down. If you notice, the valves on a Jupiter trumpet, most trumpets have, brands of trumpets have a number on the front of the valves, and this correlates with the number that's on the casing. So this is the valve casing. There's a number 1 on this casing, and a number 3 on this casing. So you've got a number 1 on this piston valve. If you have the time, then you should clean off any old residue that's on the valve so it's ready to play. So I'm just going to put a little bit of oil on each side of the valve. And yes, you can use too much. Just put a little stream, and then you put the valve back in the casing. And I just, so it disperses evenly, I just kind of spin the valve around a little bit. And remembering that the number is on the front of the valve, you want to line it up with the front of the casing, and then you slide it back down, and you should hear it click into place. Now I rotate the valve clockwise until I hear it click, and then you can lift it up and make sure the number is still on the front. The reason why I rotate the valve clockwise is because there's removable parts on your valve that you remove by turning them counterclockwise. So I've locked that back into place, and then you're ready to put it back together. And you want to be careful not to cross-thread your top cap, because if you do, it will have to be rethreaded. And so I'm really careful to do so. And then if you have trouble, you just back it out a little bit and turn it back on. So if you have any force, or if you're struggling to get it threaded and it's not easy to turn, then you need to start over. And then you lock it back down in place. So that's the first valve. Then the second valve, you pull out. While I've got this one out, I'll show you a couple different parts of the valve. This is the valve stem, which is the top part here. And then you got a valve button. So this is the valve stem. The button connects to the stem. And then you've got the top valve cap, and there's some felt in here to keep it from clicking. And then this is your valve guide. Inside the valve, you see there's a spring. That's what helps you get the trumpet valve going up and down. Lining up the number with the front. And then this one I'm going to oil while it's still sitting out. This is the quick way to do it. And again, rotating it clockwise, I'm just going to spin it a little bit, lock it back into place. Tighten it down, and that one's ready to go. Third valve. So they should not move back and forth, and you're ready to go on that. Now, let's talk about what happens if you don't put the valves in correctly. Obviously, these ports in the valves that help the air go through when you push the piston valve up and down. So I'm just experimental. I'm going to put the valve in backwards. It does not lock in place, but sometimes, some brands will. Or if you have a valve guide that's worn out, it might lock in when it's not in the correct position. And you'll know if you try to play your trumpet, no air is going to go through when you're not pushing the valves down. So now you know you've either put a valve in the wrong casing, or the valve is in incorrectly. So I just take a quick look, one at a time, and it's the number 3 valve. I put it in backwards, and now that's fine. And you should be able to hear air go through. So we're good. So now we're going to talk about oiling the pistons on the euphonium. It's very similar in the activity. What's different is the configuration of the inside of the casing and how the spring works. So for this one, I'm just going to demonstrate one valve. If you notice that my second valve is sluggish a little bit, so you either need more oil or you just need to clean it off a little bit. And so I'm going to pull the valve out, and I'm going to take it down. And how it's different from the trumpet valve is that if you notice there's no spring that's associated with the actual valve that helps it go up and down. So the spring on our euphonium is inside the casing, so that's the spring, and that's why you want to be careful not to take your valve out while your euphonium is upside down, because then your spring might fall out and you'll lose it. And that spring just stays down at the bottom of the casing. I'm just going to put some valve oil on here. And I'm going to set it back down. And I spin it around again, just like I did with the trumpet, just to disperse the oil. And you'll notice on these valves that the valve guide is attached to the top of the valve, and it's held down in place with the valve stem. And so if you back your stem out too much, then your valve guide will rotate, and then your valve will not go down in the casing correctly. And it does have a hole in the top so that it lines up correctly. So if that happens, you just make sure that it's locked into place. And that's ready to go. And it has a groove inside of this casing that lines up with the valve guide, so that you really can't put the valve in incorrectly unless the valve guide is worn down or not there. Screw that back down. Again, making sure it's not cross-threaded, and now the valve works perfectly. And you notice I can't move it back and forth, which means it's locked into place correctly as well. And that's how you oil the valve on the euphonium. Before I move on to the horn, I'd like to talk about some of the other things that you want to make sure of on these instruments. The horn has caps as well, but I always try to occasionally move these moving pieces around a little bit. These are the bottom caps. I unscrew those. The reason why is because they do corrode. Just playing them often, saliva and gunk, valve oil, things like that get down in the bottom of there. And if you don't move them back and forth and you leave them for too long, then they're going to freeze into place, and then they have to use machines to get them out, or special tools. And so anything that can unscrew, I just move it back and forth occasionally. This is your adjustable third valve slide, and it's got a screw that holds that into place. And then on this particular horn, it's got an adjustable third valve slide lock, which keeps that third valve slide from falling out. And it does back off a little bit too. If you back it off too much, you can pull your slide out, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. And so I just make sure that is firm and can move back and forth easily. Same thing with the euphonium. You've got a lyre screw and different adjusting screws that help you adjust or remove the lead pipe, and those are ready to go.